She was the nurse nobody noticed. Quiet, efficient, invisible. For 6 years, she had made herself small on purpose. Every morning at St. Adeline's Trauma Center, she clocked in under a name that wasn't hers, kept her eyes down, and let people believe exactly what they wanted to believe, that she was nothing special. But underneath the plain blue scrubs was a woman who had once carried men twice her size out of collapsing buildings while bullets tore the air apart. Nobody knew that. Not the doctors. Not the administrators. Not even the man who liked to humiliate her in front of a full waiting room. Until the night a gurney crashed through the doors carrying 3 wounded soldiers, and one of them opened his eyes, looked straight at her, and whispered a name that hadn't been spoken aloud in 6 years. Widow. The room went still. Before we go further, welcome to Silent Heroes. If stories about quiet people hiding extraordinary pasts hit you right in the chest, hit that subscribe button, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, and take a guess. What do you think she used to do? Now back to the story. Her name, as far as anyone in that hospital knew, was Rachel Combs. 34 years old. Unmarried. No family listed on her emergency contact card, except a single phone number that rang to a storage unit in Nevada. She was 5'6", plain-featured on purpose, hair always pulled back tight enough to disappear into a crowd. Her hands were steady in a way that made older nurses raise an eyebrow, but nobody ever asked why. She had learned the fastest way to survive was to make herself small. Small didn't get questioned. Small didn't get remembered. Small didn't get found. 6 years ago, Rachel had a different name. A name stitched onto a uniform that didn't exist in any public record. A name whispered by men in the worst 5 minutes of their lives, right before she pulled them back from the edge of dying. That name had been retired the day she walked away from everything, the missions, the medals, the war, and became nobody on purpose. At St. Adeline's, the man in charge of emergency was Dr. Marcus Feld. Feld had a gift for making people feel small too, except he did it out of cruelty, not survival. He liked to correct nurses loudly, in front of patients, in front of interns, in front of anyone who might be watching and might remember his name afterward. His favorite line, delivered with a thin, practiced smile, was always the same. "I don't pay you to think, Combs. I pay you to follow." Feld had built a reputation on confidence, not competence. He ordered tests he didn't understand, dismissed nurses who caught his mistakes, and smiled for hospital board photos like a man who deserved every ounce of the credit he stole from people beneath him. There was one person who saw through Rachel's disguise, though. Mr. Alvarez, an old widower who came in twice a month for his heart checkups, always sat a little too long in the waiting room just to talk to her. "You don't move like the others," he told her once, tapping his cane against the floor. "You move like somebody who's used to things going wrong fast." Rachel had only smiled and changed the subject. But she never forgot he'd said it. The night everything changed started like any other, until it didn't. At 11:47 p.m., the emergency doors exploded open. Sirens. Shouting. Boots on tile. Multiple GSW, incoming, "We need a trauma team now." 3 men. Military fatigues, soaked dark with blood. One unconscious, one screaming, one silent in the worst possible way, pale, sweating, breathing in short, shallow pulls that Rachel recognized instantly. Feld took charge immediately, barking orders that sounded confident and were completely wrong. "Start him on fluids wide open, get me imaging on the chest wound." Rachel's stomach dropped. Wide open fluids on that patient would kill him. His neck veins were distended. His breath sounds were nearly silent on the left side. His blood pressure was dropping while his heart rate climbed, the unmistakable, textbook signature of a tension pneumothorax, a condition where trapped air collapses a lung and crushes the heart against the chest wall. Pumping him full of fluid wouldn't stabilize him. It would drown what was left of him from the inside. She didn't say a word yet. Old habits. Don't contradict him. Don't mention misdiagnoses. Don't make him look small. Then the second soldier, barely conscious, turned his head toward her. His eyes locked onto hers. And he said it again. Widow. The word hit the room like a detonation. Feld's head snapped up. What did you say? The soldier's cracked lips moved again, weaker this time. It's really you. They said you were dead. Every eye in that trauma bay turned toward Rachel Combs. Feld's face twisted with suspicion and something closer to fear. Combs. What is he talking about? Rachel said nothing. Her hands, for the first time in 6 years inside these walls, had stopped shaking. She didn't answer him. Not yet. The soldier on the gurney was crashing, lips turning faint blue, one side of his chest barely moving, his neck veins bulging like rope pulled too tight. Every second Feld spent asking questions was a second closer to a heart that would simply stop. Rachel stepped forward. Move, she said. Not a request. Not the voice of Rachel Combs. Feld's mouth opened to protest, but something in her stance stopped him. Spine straight, chin level, the tremor that always lived faintly in her right hand completely gone. This is a tension pneumothorax, she said, already reaching for a large-bore needle. Trapped air is collapsing his lung and crushing his heart. Fluids won't save him. Decompression will. For the people watching, it looked like magic. It wasn't. It was a needle placed precisely between the second and third rib, just above the third rib's edge to avoid the nerve and blood vessels running beneath it, releasing trapped air, letting the lung re-expand, giving a crushed heart room to beat again. It was a procedure she had done in the dark, in dust storms, in places with no clean towels and no second chances. A hiss of escaping air. Immediate. Audible. The soldier's chest rose on its own for the first time in minute. Sats climbing, someone called out. 94, 96. Rachel didn't celebrate. She kept working, calling for a chest tube kit, her voice level and clipped, giving orders like she'd given them 1,000 times before to people who didn't ask her to repeat herself twice. Feld stood frozen at the edge of the bay, exposed in front of his own staff. By 6 o'clock the next morning, Feld had his revenge ready. Rachel Combs is suspended, effective immediately, he announced to the department, chin high, voice dripping with false regret. Unauthorized medical action. Insubordination. We'll be reviewing her credentials. Nobody in the room believed him. Nobody said anything either, except one voice. She saved his life, said the charge nurse quietly. You didn't even know what was wrong with him. Feld's jaw tightened. That's not the point. Rachel took off her badge and set it on the counter. No, she said. I am just done hiding. A crowd had gathered by then. Nurses, techs, even Mr. Alvarez, who'd come in early for his appointment and refused to leave the hallway once he heard what happened. That's when the doors opened again, differently this time. No sirens. Just the steady, deliberate footsteps of 2 men in dress uniforms. We're looking for Master Sergeant Elena Voss, the older one said, scanning the room. Call sign, widow. Every head turned to Rachel. The officer stepped forward, his voice carrying across the department like it belonged in a courtroom. 2 bronze stars. A silver star for actions during an extraction under direct fire in 2019, where she treated and evacuated 11 wounded soldiers under sustained enemy engagement. Field Medic, Special Operations Attachment. Missing in official record for 6 years, because she chose to disappear rather than accept a promotion that would have buried her back in a desk. Feld's face had gone the color of paper. That's not possible, he stammered. She's a nurse. A regular. She's a decorated combat medic, the officer said flatly, who just saved a man's life last night using field triage skills most trauma doctors never train for. And you suspended her for it. Feld had nothing left. I didn't know. That's the problem, the officer said. You didn't ask. The truth came out fast after that. Feld's falsified diagnostic reports, an undisclosed financial relationship with a device manufacturer whose unproven equipment he'd been quietly pushing through the ER, cutting corners that had already hurt patients before Rachel ever stepped into that trauma bay. The board didn't need convincing twice. But the danger wasn't over. Feld, desperate and cornered, tried to destroy the evidence himself, breaking into records after hours, only to find Rachel already there, already one step ahead, the same instincts that once kept her alive in war zones now standing between him and the door. "You don't get to walk away from this," she told him, steady, unshaken. It was in that room, confronting him, that the old grief resurfaced, the comrade she hadn't saved, the one memory that still haunted her more than any medal ever could. His voice echoed in her mind for just a moment. "You did everything right. Some people just don't make it. That's not on you." She held on to that. "Security's on their way," she said. "Sit down." He did. Vitals stable. Pulse steady. Situation controlled. "Got it," she whispered to herself. Feld lost his license within the month. The hospital named a new trauma protocol after the case. Quietly, without fanfare, the way real change often happens. Rachel was offered her old rank back. She turned it down. Instead, she stayed at St. Adeline's, reinstated, promoted, and given something new. Her own combat-trained trauma response unit, blending both of who she was instead of hiding either one. Mr. Alvarez was there the day the unit opened, tapping his cane against the floor with a knowing smile. "Told you," he said. "You always moved like somebody ready for things to go wrong." She smiled back. "Somebody has to be. People spend their whole lives trying to be seen. But sometimes the strongest ones spend years trying not to be, carrying entire histories quietly, waiting for the one moment the world actually needs who they really are." Rachel didn't need a title to be a hero. She just needed a reason to stop hiding. If this story moved you, hit like, subscribe to Silent Heroes, and tell us in the comments, what would you have done in that trauma bay? The next story is already waiting. The end.